Welcome to Disruptive Successor, a show for next generation leaders in family businesses and entrepreneurs who want to disrupt the status quo and take their existing business to a whole new level. We all know that what got us here isn't going to get us there. This show will provide inspiration, advice, and resources to help you create massive impact. This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session. Hi, it's Jonathan Goldhill, and welcome back to another episode of the Disruptive Successor Show. Today, we're going to be talking about women and money, men and money, family businesses and money. And my guest is Jennifer Lee. She's the founder of Modern Wealth, a Sarasota, Florida-based financial firm with a focus on helping individuals experiencing transition. With 30 years of expertise in the financial services industry, Jennifer has found that a relationship with an advisor is the most critical at the intersections in life where emotions collide with financial events. Jennifer herself is a successor in a family business that plans and manages people's wealth and provides a fresh perspective to the financial planning process by digging deep to understand what drives her clients. As part of the process, she encourages clients to communicate their values to the most important people in their lives by writing a family love letter. And this led her to write a book called Squeeze the Juice, Live with Purpose, Then Leave a Legacy. Jennifer, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks for having me.
So you were in the business of what the family did. And tell us a little bit about your backstory. Did you learn the business from your dad? How did he interest you in the business and get you to where you are today?
That's a great question, and a fun one for me. Takes me back to Saturday mornings, going to my dad's office as a young kid, probably destroying my his right hand's secretary's desk, playing with everything and making a mess, stapling things and so on. But I would take, I really learned from my dad. For many, many years, I went on appointments with him. I remember going to meet with clients at their homes. Probably I was riding around in the back of the car with a coloring book or something of that sort. But I got it very, very young. So I've always been entrepreneurial in nature. Mm-hmm. Multiple jobs as a kid. Loved just getting connected with different groups. And it was always, my father was always there. So when I was asked to join the business, I jumped at it. I was in the accounting field for a couple of years out of college, and he called me one day and said, "Hey, I've got an opening. Do you have an interest?" And I said, "Yes." Now realize, Jonathan, I didn't know I was going to have to call people and talk to them. Okay. I didn't know I was going to have to get up in front of a room of people and have conversations. So, but I did know that my father was always around, that we had a high quality of life, that he loved his clients and enjoyed what he did. And so I took my background in finance and my understanding of emotional intelligence and how he deals with people, and jumped in both feet.
So you wrote a book about living with purpose and leaving a legacy. And we all know that a big topic today with young people and even older people is this whole concept of what's our why. And Simon Sinek wrote that book, Start With Why, and it was probably the best TED talk of all time. So I imagine this is something that you think about for yourself and talk to your clients about. Is that right?
Well, I'm glad that you brought up Simon Sinek, one of my absolute favorites. When I relocated to Florida, about 12 years ago, I needed to go introduce myself and meet new people. And I found that I would go to these networking events and people would say, "What do you do?" And I'd say, "I'm a financial advisor." And they would lean physically away from me and say, "I have one of you."
Right.
Or my husband handles that. And so I had to really look at my practice, look at my clients, and reposition my purpose. So I listened to Simon Sinek, I looked at who my clients were, I looked at who I enjoyed working with and who benefited the most and became raving fans. And then I repositioned my communication. So now I say, I work with women in financial transition. And
What does that mean exactly?
people say, "What does that mean?" And I say,
Okay.
they don't say, "I'm scared of you, I'm running away."
Right.
They say, "What does that mean?" I say that means women who are going through big change. And this applies to business owners too.
Sure.
Big change, buying and selling a business, loss of a spouse, change in relationship. There's a lot of balls up in the air. And my job is to help create a path forward so they can go in confidence. So not everybody is comfortable with money, and I love to help get them to a better place. So it starts with their why. What
That's
is it that they want their money to do?
And so tell us more about your book. What's the message behind it? What does someone walk away or take away from it? What will they get out of reading it?
I really hope that it is an easy read. I wrote it for what I would call the non-moneyed party.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote it for the person who says, I really, I'm kind of bored with this conversation about money. I want to stick my head in the sand. I don't feel like dealing with it. So I communicate through story and through talking about writing your love letter. Because if you think about it, if you're communicating to your family, where are the assets? Who can you trust? How should you spend the money? Where are the passwords? How much life insurance do we have? All of these things. In addition, you're saying, this is what I want for you in your life. These are the values. This is what I want to communicate to you about marriage, about work ethic, about giving back to your community, and so on. You're communicating your values and your resources in writing your love letter. So I try to have those conversations with my clients so I can really get to the root of what drives them, because money is just a tool. It doesn't have to be this scary thing. It's a tool to facilitate you to where you want to go.
So talk to me more about the love letter. Is this something that I would write and include with my trust and my will and all, powers of attorney, such that when all this was revealed to the people who are going to be, a party to my, my assets, my distributions, they would get this love letter as almost the introduction? Because the rest of that stuff is pretty formal, pretty lawyer stuff. This sounds pretty touchy-feely, like in a good way, and explains the intentions and the best of your thinking behind what you were doing here. I like it. Tell me more.
Absolutely. So I'm glad that you asked that, because certainly I'm not an attorney and you absolutely need all of those documents and you want to make sure that you have those legal documents. Writing your family love letter is just that. It's the precursor to all these things. It explains the intention behind the legal documents, and hopefully it softens the communication between family.
Mm-hmm.
Our family had the opportunity or the misfortune, however you want to look at it, of having our family love letter communicated to us verbally. My dad got sick and we had a family vacation planned 2 days after, and we were able to go. And he communicated right then and there at 6 o'clock in the morning on the deck of the house we were in. He said, here's what my expectations are of you. Here's what resources your mom will have. I'm going to pay off a mortgage. I'm going to do these things. Here's how much life insurance I have. He talked about who he wanted to sing at his funeral. and what he wanted them to sing,
Wow.
who he wanted to give the eulogy. One of the funniest things is the expectation about not my mother not using her visa when we go out for a meal. So, we're always jumping to try to get the check ahead of her. And sometimes she tricks me, but we do make the effort to get the check. So it's really about, not everybody is comfortable talking about money. Obviously, my dad was an advisor. He was comfortable talking about it, but he didn't write his family love letter. He just communicated it verbally. And I think a lot of people, when they get sick, they get scared. And of course, he was scared. They get scared and they don't do these things. So I try to encourage this communication earlier on. Hey, kids, this is what I planned for you. This is what my expectations are of you. And if you have young children, and you're not there, and they're 22 years old and getting married, or 25 years old and getting married, what do you want to tell them about who you hope their spouse will be? What do you want to tell them about what you hope their career will look like, or how they'll treat their mother? All those things.
Let's talk about maybe a case study. You were referencing one earlier before we got onto this recording. Maybe particularly about women who are going through some kind of a transition. If you have one that's related to a family business, a generational exit, where money's going to the next generation. Some of the challenging things that comes up, so that the listener who can preemptively think about addressing these before it's too late. What?
Sure. Well, I think that first, all the parties have to be on the same path and on the same thought process, and that can be a real challenge. Sometimes the owner knows that they're going to have successors into the future, but they're not quite ready to give up the baton or give up too much control. So it's a dance, it's a negotiation, and it's a long-term thing, and that can be frustrating for the young person. I myself had that experience.
Yes, I have clients who have
Especially,
that experience that I'm going through right now with. So yes.
sure, especially I always joke, especially if you're from the Northeast and you're a firstborn. I mean, forget about it. It's a double whammy there. So, I think there's a variety of challenges. I have a young lady who I'm working with right now, and she is a third generation, going soon to be successor. She's a part owner now, but there are multiple people in the family who are going to inherit parts of the business. And she has been out of the business raising a family for the last 12 years and wants to get back in.
Oh,
And it's an interesting dance, because for 12 years she's been viewed as the daughter with the kids, and in a different light. And so she is fighting to use her master's degree. She's educated. It's not a matter of capabilities, it's a matter of perception versus reality, and finding a spot inside that business. So one of the things that she's doing is she did this part on her own. She went to her father and communicated with him about her interest in getting back in the business. But she said, look, I know that we don't have a spot for this. We haven't carved one out yet. We haven't created one. So I want to show you what I want to do for 2 months, and don't pay me. I just want to demonstrate. And so she's been engaging with all the different units inside of the business to A, better understand them, but B, make sure that the employees are heard and feel heard, and then be able to communicate that back to the team and her
hmm.
father and the other siblings that are involved.
And why was she chosen as the successor? Just purely because she was the oldest?
No, she's not the only successor. She's one of
One of,
many who
okay.
want to be in the business.
Okay, but she's your client that you're working
She's
with
my
on.
client, yes.
Okay. And so do people typically come to you when they're middle-aged, beyond middle-aged, um,
You
50
know,
or older? I mean, is
there
there a
I
profile?
wish I wish there was a perfect time. If you think about, I think that most people come to an advisor when things change
Mm-hmm.
or when things are stressful. So you said at the beginning, it's where money or financial stuff meets emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So that can be divorce, widowed, buying or selling a business, joining a practice or a family business. Those big upsets are when you say, wait a minute, I really need some support and some perspective and some help going down this path to make sure I don't make a mistake.
So, but do you find that it's pretty common that people have a wake up call? They hit middle age, like 50s, and they ask themselves, am I on track to retire? Am I close? Do I have enough money? I mean, I would think that, it's unlikely that it's less likely that someone who's 20 or 30, maybe just having a new child, is coming and wanting to do a financial plan. That's the very mature individual. That's the rare individual who goes into selling life insurance and they're just got out of college. It's, you
You're
know,
absolutely right.
so um, the problem is that as you get older, it gets more difficult. There's probably less moves that you can make. How do you manage this tension?
So I will tell you, one of my favorite age groups is the 52 to 55-year-old, and I call this time frame crunch time.
Hmm.
This is when the individual wakes up and sort of freaks out a bit that they have stuff everywhere. They have 401ks, they have investments, they have assets, they have things, a business, and they have no plan for how they're going to replace their income, or they haven't really facilitated any of these things because they've been raising their family, they've been building their business, they've been doing those things. Now, all of a sudden, they have a little bit more time. They're probably making a lot more money. They're in that really juicy revenue producing time of their life. And I call this crunch time. It's time to really get serious. And and that's oftentimes when people will come to me. Today I met with a young couple who inherited a large amount of money and they're in their 40s. And they know that they need some support around how to make that last and what to do with it. And got all kinds of ideas. It's just a matter of, are those ideas appropriate for them? And is it going to last and serve their family?
Yeah. What's your experience about how people choose a financial advisor, a financial planner? Is it strictly referral? I mean, for most part, so they know someone who went through a similar process. Is it a competitive bid situation where they're going out and meeting with multiple people for fit? What's generally your experience in your industry around that?
I, I think the rule of thumb is that you need to be talking to two or more people.
Hmm.
I definitely recommend that you have a conversation with different advisors, ask for what their experience is, have a one-on-one meeting with them, and see whether or not there's a connection. If you're not feeling like the person is talking to you or understanding you or has the experience to support you, then it's not going to work. Many times there are, when you say a bid situation, for the most part, if you get to a level playing field first, then it's all the same. And so I say, look, it doesn't matter if it's me or if it's Jonathan. It's a matter of whether or not, where do you feel most comfortable? So I don't, um, you know, we're looking for clients that are going to be with us for my lifetime. I'm looking for clients to stay with me for 20 years. I'm not looking to sell a product. I'm not looking to give you a quick answer. I
Hmm.
want to help you support your family and achieve your goals, whatever those are.
What are some of the unique challenges for women who are going through these transitions? Yeah, I imagine it gets beyond just the stereotypical roles of the male and the man and the woman, where the man has been historically maybe the breadwinner and the money manager, or is that still prevalent? Is that still the most challenging thing for women?
I think There's certainly several things with going through divorce. My particular practice, that happens to be more of a niche for me,
Hmm.
is focusing on the non-moneyed party. So that could be a man or a woman, doesn't matter. It's the person who didn't really handle the finances. So I call them, so oftentimes I talk about being an ostrich, right? So if when we talk about finance and this stuff, you want to put your head in the sand, then, maybe you're going to need some direction and some guidance as you go through, because you need to be able to translate all these resources into what's it going to get me. So that's where the why comes in, just right back to the beginning. What is it that you want, right? What are your income? What are your resources? What are your assets? And what do you want? Well, I want to live in XYZ neighborhood, and I want to send my kids to this school, and I want to be able to travel. Okay, so now we have to take your resources and make them fit this. Um, and that's translating that into a more palatable way for that non-moneyed party. They can figure out what they want. They just don't know how to make the money mechanics uh, achieve their goals, and that's my job.
Yeah.
So that's really relatively easy. But I think any divorce on a man or on a woman, it is emotionally devastating. It's stressful. Hopefully, I always say this, and divorce coaches will chuckle and attorneys will say, "I wish," but I hope that most people will look at their soon-to-be ex and say, "I'm not in love with you anymore, but you were once my love, and you are the father or the mother of my children, and let's just figure this out and divide the assets and not be evil and move on." And then it's a matter of, are you going from a big house to two small houses?
Yeah. So navigating business succession and feeling confident through that process is maybe more challenging for women than men, maybe. Um, but probably the biggest challenge is just the transfer of wealth from one generation to the next and the values associated with that. Some parents are thinking that their kids ought to buy into the business. Others are thinking that it could be gifted. Others are thinking that they'll get it when I die. And do you find yourself getting involved in those kind of conversations? And do you have it with both generations together? I mean, how do you like bridge the gap between what one generation thinks is the best thing to do and what the other generation maybe wants or thinks is the best thing?
That's uh, a very challenging scenario, and I find that yes, I'm having conversations on both ends, but often not quite to the point where I have both parties, right? So more often than not, I'm either right now I'm working with a gentleman who's owned a business for 40 years. His son is in the business, been with him at least 15 now. And the gentleman is looking at retiring in the next 5 years. And I'm having to educate him about how to facilitate that business to his son. He said, well, he's put time in and he'll just get the business. Okay, well, what about your income and what are you going to need in retirement from this business? And how is your son going to buy that out? So right now we're talking with, we have a call to talk with an attorney team to talk about what are the strategies that we can start to employ in the next 5 years, because that's the goal. The son knows he's going to get the business, the son wants the business, but they haven't structured how to do that. So oftentimes I'll get involved in that perspective, just pooling some resources, having those talks. We touched briefly prior to the recording on a cash balance plan. So in this situation, here's a client 5 to 7 years out from pulling the plug. We might super fund a cash balance plan so that there's some additional resources for him when he does in fact retire. There's lots of different ways to get involved. More often than not, I don't know, are you dealing more with the successor or the successee?
Oftentimes both of the generations. And part of the job that needs to get done, although it isn't really my focus, is to bridge the communication between the two of them and to act as a conduit, or act at which I'm trying to, we want to eliminate the conduit and bring them both together, but they're not talking to each other about this because the younger generation doesn't want the older generation to feel like, hey, we're waiting for you to die, or if you could just hand it over to us, we'll take it from here. The older generation doesn't want the younger generation, I always say, to bet the farm. They want to protect the future, the asset base. So I try to shake things a little loose on both sides and bring them closer together. And I think that's just an important part of the work that needs to get done. If I'm a scaling up coach and the younger generation is in their 30s, 20s, 30s, 40s, they're willing to take more risk. They're younger. The older generation is more protective of what they have. They don't want to go into debt or more debt. They don't want to, they don't want to take on equity partners. They're willing to take maybe their children on as partners because they trust them. But there's a lot of just kind of, it moves like molasses. It's another colleague calls it the sticky baton syndrome. It just gets sticky passing it from one generation to the next. And so I find that it's difficult to have a business owner who wants to 2 to 10x the business if the older person is holding back, unless they think, well, my child is going to grow this business and has aspirations beyond what I had, and I'll go along for the ride. I'm going to make sure I can trust them, but good things might come. So these are challenging conversations that take time to work through.
It is not a 1 + 1 = 2 scenario by any means.
I mean, I'd like to think that, Jennifer, you have like a sequential, if you do step 1, then we'll do step 2, we'll do and step 3, and you can sequentially move through this whole financial planning process, generational transition process. But it doesn't quite work that way, I don't think.
Yeah, I'd like to say that there's an easy button, but there's a lot of discussion in between. And I think the first part is opening the mind of the existing owner to the future and to different scenarios that might be appealing. What's appealing about this one versus another, so that you can start that conversation and keep doing that sticky baton. I like that analogy.
Exactly. So, all right. So do you find most of your clients are in Florida? You're based in Sarasota. Are they coming from all over the country, the world?
They're coming from all over the country, not the world. Most of our clients, the primary three different states, has to do with where we've lived: Maryland, Florida, and Ohio. But of late, lots of clients from Arizona and California, some from Montana. It just depends. So we have to get licensed in whatever state that we're in, and we're licensed in many, but before we can engage in a conversation of depth.
And Jennifer, what's a good way for them to first learn about you? Do you like people to read your book first, to go to your website, get familiar with some of the videos, or just have a conversation with you? Where's the best place people start?
I appreciate that. It really depends on the person. So if you're a reader, great. The book is only going to take you a couple hours to read. It's going to give you some nuggets. It's going to prepare you to have good questions and for us to have a meaningful conversation. If you're an ostrich, maybe you want to look at some videos on the website just to get yourself comfortable with whether or not I'm somebody you want to have a conversation with. I have a Calendly, and always after a podcast, hopefully there's lots of things that you learned from this podcast, but maybe you have a question or two that we didn't answer. And if you would like to have that conversation, that squeeze the juice call, happy to do so.
Sounds good. Jennifer, thanks for joining the show with me today. Folks, if you're looking to get a hold of Jennifer, you can find her at her website, modern-wealth.com. Jennifer Lee, I'm sure you can find her on LinkedIn and other places like that. Thanks for being on the show. Folks, if you are in a generational transition situation, if you have assets that you are wondering, how do I want to plan for this? Think about this concept of this love letter. It's a great place to start. I love the concept. I know I'll be looking for it. I think there's a template you can download on Jennifer Lee's modern-wealth website and do it, because it's never too late to get started today. All right, folks, you know the drill. If you got some value from this, please share this show with others. Like it, and give us some social love, and give us a great rating on your podcast listening application of choice.
This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session. Thank you for joining us on the Disruptive Successor podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, review, and share with a friend who would benefit from the message. If you're interested in picking up a copy of my book, Disruptive Successor, go to disruptivesuccessor.com.